Clubhouse.
And you can tell me I'm crazy. You can say I need to move on. I have a whole life ahead of me and all that shit. I am 65 years old. I don't have a whole life ahead of me. I have a very small window to be reckless, to make decisions that feed this and never factor this into the equation. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what he begged me to do for 30 years. I'm going to finally see this place.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of the Madison, the newest series from creator Taylor Sheridan. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing the series premiere of The Madison. The Madison was created by Taylor Sheridan, and tonight's episode was written by Taylor Sheridan. It was directed by Christina Alexandra Voros, a popular Taylor collaborator. Just to give you an idea, Christina previously directed 12 episodes of Yellowstone, 4 episodes of 1883, and 5 episodes of Lawman Bass Reeves. So she is a trusted Taylor Sheridan acolyte. And I think this episode, we're going to talk about it actually just a couple minutes, but I think there was a connectivity to several Yellowstone shows in its look and feel, also in the music, which she didn't necessarily have anything to do with, but there's a lot of even though it's not technically a Yellowstone show, it is definitely a Taylor Sheridan show, and I think it felt like that a lot.
The one thing that I noted about the sweeping landscapes, and we're going to go into more of that, I did feel like it was quicker cuts, though. Sometimes, like in Yellowstone, we would spend sometimes it would be like a whole minute just sweeping by landscapes. This cuts were much quicker. I don't know if that's the sort of, we're mixing this New York City / country, whatever we want to call it, rural life. Yeah, where I hear you snapping. It's like very like clip. Like, yeah, we're going to show you the landscape, but like there's this overlay of New York City that's going on here that is going to keep things a little bit faster. So just a community note, listeners, please join us over on Facebook and the Yellowstone 1923, 1883, 4 6s, and the Madison discussion and news group to discuss the Madison and the whole universe of Taylor Sheridan shows. We are very excited to talk all of this stuff with you guys. I know the Marshals just came out recently. We have a discussion thread for that. We don't do spoilers over there. We do episodic posts, so you can like go under that specific episode and say what you want to say. And if you haven't watched that episode yet, just don't click on that particular post, and you won't know anything about those spoilers. So we protect our listeners for sure.
This is an odd release schedule to me.
It is very unusual. I've really never seen anything like this.
Especially for a Taylor Sheridan show. Now, he has recently announced he's leaving Paramount, and this is one of the last probably brand new shows that he's going to be doing for them. And so maybe that plays into it where he didn't want this show to release over a month and a half. But to do just 6 episodes with this cast, this is a loaded cast. You have Kurt Russell, you've got Michelle Pfeiffer, you've got Matthew Fox. These are pretty big names to get Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell, especially coming off of the heels of Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren in 1923. But to do 6 episodes, okay, that's not a lot to munch on here. But to do it in 3 episodes released at a time over a 2-weekend period, we're going to have the whole season in 8 days.
Yeah, you said 2 weekends, but that makes it sound even longer. It's just
8
1
days.
week.
8 days, right. And you're going to get all 6 episodes. I mean, we're going to do episode by episode. You're not getting 6 episodes from us all at once because we take our time to digest these and
we don't watch ahead. For you guys who wonder, we don't watch ahead. So like we've watched just the pilot of this, come in here with predictions and thoughts. So if you sat down and watched all 3, you might sit here and be like, "Oh, you guys are so wrong." Give us some grace. We haven't watched it. We're not going to binge it like that. We're going to watch it one at a time and discuss it one at a time.
We have all 6 episodes, so we will see all of them before you guys, but we are recording them one at a time. Yeah, so kind of weird. So I wonder if this is just business. I wonder, this feels to me, this isn't a creative decision as much as it is a business decision. But I feel like I don't like binge watching shows. I like episodic weekly releases. I like being able to think about it and talk about it and build up some anticipation before the next week comes around. This doesn't really work for me as far as like a release schedule goes.
I'm mixed on it because some part of me says, you know, sometimes, especially reality shows, I do like to sit down after I have a couple of them, you know, recorded, or a couple of them have already been seen, so that I can just sit down and watch a streamer and have, you know, maybe 4 or 5 to watch in a go, right? I enjoy that, but I do really appreciate the shows that make you wait, because if you want to discuss it, I mean, how many times have we watched a show where there's like 4 or 5 we watch back to back, and then I'm like, I can't remember which episode this happened in. I don't know exactly where it happened. That doesn't happen to you when you watch it week after week after week. You know, oh, that was like 3 weeks ago when we saw that character, or that important thing happened, because you're kind of marking time because you're waiting for them. That is in a different experience, which makes me wonder what the hope of the viewer experience was supposed to be, because he tends to have these sweeping stories, these sort of epic stories. It makes me wonder if the reason why, beyond business, because I wholeheartedly agree this has a lot to do with that, if you take that part out, is it that this is a smaller, more compact story? We're getting like a glimpse into this family at a very specific point in time. We don't need to spend 6 weeks with them to get the full feeling. If you spent 1 week with this family, you would understand everything you need to know. And maybe that's what we're going to learn. Maybe.
I think it definitely positions it more like a classic mini-series, like you and I would have grown up with in the 80s.
Yeah.
And this was the longest episode. This came in at 66 minutes. All the other episodes, I believe, are going to be in the 43 to 45 minute range. This was the longest one. So yeah, you're getting, I guess if you're watching all 3, it's maybe just a really long movie feeling. And so maybe think of it more like 2 parts 1 and part 2 of a 6-hour movie that you're getting. Discuss it, and hopefully at the end of it, we'll feel like we got our full fill of the Clyburn family story and we understand them.
Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what do you think of this release schedule? Is this something that you're excited for? Are you like, awesome, I can spend like 3 hours one weekend watching it, 3 hours the next, and move on to my next show? Or do you like it when it's spread out? Do you like to talk about it with your friends or family or whatever, waiting for the next episode? We want to hear from you. So definitely come on over to Facebook, or just hit us up on the Pod Clubhouse .com website,
or leave a comment at Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But more on that later. Let's talk about some similarities with Yellowstone, because I think this show will suffer, or I don't mean that in a bad way, but it will inevitably, let's say that, be compared to Yellowstone because of Sheridan, because of the location. I mean, the Madison River is just west of Bozeman, and which is just west of Paradise Valley. We're very close to where the Dutton Ranch is in the grand scheme of the world. So I think it is fair to talk about some similarities that maybe we experienced on a subconscious level, if not a conscious level. While I was watching this, Caroline, I thought to myself, this music feels very much like the Yellowstone prequels. Specifically, I was thinking 1883 and 1923. Those are the 2 prequels. But 1883 in particular. So I went and I looked. Brendan Vivian, who is doing the music for this show, also did the music, surprise, surprise, for 1883, 1923. He worked for 4 years on mainline Yellowstone, and he's actually currently doing the music for Marshals, the spinoff, the official Yellowstone spinoff series, Marshals, which, when I watched that at that show, the first 2 episodes, the music felt very much like 1883 to me. So I think what I'm saying is the music feels like Brett and Vivian. He certainly has an aesthetic that he's bringing to the, West. Did you feel that? Am I alone here? Or
you're not alone at all. I definitely felt the Yellowstone-universe vibe, all of those shows. My issue with it, having not watched the Marshals, 1883 and 1923 in particular, that music feels like it's of a time. If you're going to set it in a much more modern time, like now is what I assume this show is being set in, I had a bit of a hard time, like sort of mixing the visuals with the music, because it was like we were in a modern airplane, or we're watching stuff that's happening that is too modern to me to have this music playing. So I don't want to say it felt forced at times, or it was like, hey, remember that this is about the same type of vibe as the Yellowstone. Like, I felt like the music was whispering to us. I wonder if they should have held off that music until and for the scenes that are in Montana, when we're actually at the cabin, when we're actually fishing, as opposed to just playing it at all times throughout. Because I don't think it makes as much sense in different portions of the show. But I appreciated the continuity, and I do enjoy the music.
I agree with that. It did feel a little old timey to me. I mean, if Isabel May had come out, with an Elsa voiceover, it'd be like, Preston didn't realize it was his last day on this earth. The land was rising up to grab him.
But it's not that part. That's not the part that would have bugged me. That's fine for that stuff to play over that stuff. What would have bothered me, and when they were still sort of playing it around, is like when they're at the dinner table and she was like, what Russell didn't understand is that this investment could be difficult for the family, or whatever. Like, what are you, like, don't give me the Elsa voice about modern day stuff, and don't necessarily give me that old timey music when we're not necessarily doing the old timey visuals.
One thing I did realize, I had not realized how starved I was for, was the nature porn. There is nothing more calming to me than when Yellowstone would do the 5 minutes of animals running and grazing and rivers running and just people standing in a river fly fishing, John and his old buddies that he would fly fish with. Like, I miss that. And so this really scratched an itch for me, like a big itch for me that I didn't even know I missed in the nature shots and the long nature shots. But you're right. You mentioned at the beginning, it did seem a little snappier with the cuts. It wasn't as prolonged.
Like you got like 15 to 20 seconds of a view and then boom, you're to the next one. And not that the next view wasn't beautiful as well, but there was times on Yellowstone you'd be like, come on already. Like, how long are we going to be just sweeping here? Because sometimes they really indulged. Right. And that's okay. Like that, I'm glad for you as a viewer that you completely loved it. Sometimes it would happen at times when it was like we were at a really pivotal point in the plot. And it was like, oh my God, are we not going to get back to the actual happening? We're going to spend 2 or 3 minutes, just going across the pasture. That is when it would get like, anxiety ridden for me as a viewer. But in this, and maybe they took note of that. Maybe they got viewer feedback that was like, hey, we like the nature porn. However, could you speed it up a little? Because this seems like maybe there was some feedback.
But also fear not, though, because they did give us 20 seconds of zooming in on Preston tying a fly on his rod. I mean, I was like, oh shit, we are back, y'all. Like, we are getting it. Like, let me see that knot, buddy.
And also, when they were releasing the fish, that was oftentimes a real zoom in, slowed down. They may have even actually literally slowed it down where you like really watch that fish get away. Like, I felt like sometimes they do that kind of stuff for the animal lovers who need to know these fish are okay at the end of the whole thing. And it's like, no, like for real, look, they're okay. They swim away. So that does a heart good too in the nature watching of it all.
Yeah, I think I think Taylor is kind of like that with his shows. He's very much like back to basics, living with the land. Like, we're going to take that fish only if we need to eat that fish.
Same with like tying on the various lures and things that they were doing. Like there's different moments where it was like, this is a technique. This is a skill. This is a lost art that I want to highlight. We saw that a lot. I can remember when we were like watching The Saddle Maker. We were watching some of the leather work. We were watching maybe even just putting a saddle on a horse and watching them like tie the ropes and do all the buckles and everything. Like, he does take time to want you to notice all the different things that have to go on in order to do this. And I think that that's beautiful. And I think it is his point, I think, in a lot of this stuff is, please remember like what it takes to actually live this way and have this lifestyle. It's work.
When Preston is going on about how I ain't going to keep this fish, and Paul is like, yeah, of course you are, and I think Stacy makes a comment that she would send him some, silly picture with his fish, like his dead fish that he caught. But I think Paul is Taylor there speaking to like, that's not why we do this. We don't do it to take the fish unless you're going to eat the fish. It's not a sport. It's a skill. We're not here to torture fish just for the sake of it or to mount them on walls. Like if I'm taking a fish, it's because I'm feeding dedicate myself for my family. And, so I think that's very consistent with the Taylor Sheridan, honoring the way these occupations and these skills and these people live their life, that for someone like me who grew up in, New York City, never appreciated and never ever thought about when Laura, Stacy's friend, makes a joke about just go 3 hours north and into the Catskills. That's where they invented fly fishing. There's an area up here where they literally call it the home of fly fishing. They have an international tournament of fly fishers come to fly fish up here to prove their wares and to live this skill and the lifestyle. So it exists here, but it wasn't something growing up in Queens I was necessarily exposed to. So I always appreciate that in the Taylor Sheridan shows, highlighting these things that a lot of us don't ever think about.
And they really did hit the nourishing whole portion when they were doing the elk scene. I mean, there was a whole moment there between the garden and the elk meat that was like, look, you can either be like disgusted about this, or you can say, this is nourishing to our body. And so there was a purpose for this animal to give up their life. We absolutely have seen that throughout the Yellowstone shows. I can remember on different situations where they stopped and prayed over an animal, or they had a moment to be like, this is going to nourish us. The blooding, right? Like, that's, all the different parts where they talked a lot about, like, we don't just take life for the sake of taking life. Like, this is about this cycle of nourishing ourselves and then giving back to the earth and the whole thing. That was well conveyed in this one as well.
Let's talk about the two themes here of the show, or at least the way I was taking it. And I'm curious what you think. So I think the first theme is definitely grief, right? This is a show about loss. This is going to be a show about Stacy and her children, and to a lesser extent, the grandchildren, who I get the impression maybe didn't know their grandfather so well, living without this man. But certainly Stacy, 39 years of marriage, together since they're 19. They're in their 60s now. That's a lifetime together. And now she has to learn to live without that right hand, right? That left leg, the other part of her heart. This was not an easy watch.
It was not. And I mean, we can share with our listeners, we have both lost parents. And so from the standpoint of how the girls were acting, the daughters, we have been in those shoes in terms of losing a parent. We do know what that loss is. Neither of us have lost a spouse, so we don't have the insight on that. We have seen in Taylor Sheridan shows the loss of children, and how devastating that is. So he definitely has explored it from all different angles and trying to sort of, I think, tap into the human experience, try to figure out how we all get through this and how it might feel differently, from a grandchild losing a grandfather to having Stacy lose Preston. Like, these are all going to be very different feelings. And I appreciated that at least their one daughter, Abigail, seemed to have grasped the idea of it's very different to lose a spouse. That conversation was very difficult in the way that they were saying things like,
I have the clip. Yeah, I'm going to play the clip here in a second.
I do want you to play that for our listeners, because I do feel like that is a whole, it takes you a moment to kind of wonder, like, how are you treating your parents and what are they to you? And
I've never heard it presented this way ever before. Yeah. This was kind of refreshing. Let's take a listen to it, and then we can drill down on it a little bit.
She's acting like she's the only one who lost somebody. Okay, he was my father.
Dare. She has been with him since she was 19.
I've been with him since I was born. So were you.
We were not with him. He was present when we needed something, when we needed a chauffeur or a cheerleader, a therapist, a bank. You want to mourn something? Why don't we mourn the time that we didn't give him? He was her lover and her best friend. It is not the same thing. You lost the idea of him, Paige, which you can still have. Girls, go back outside now.
We can hear you yelling.
I'd say you nailed it. With me. But if that's all he was to you two, what a shame, girls.
I think Abigail is speaking her truth here, and I think she's trying to defend her mom, but there's some anger coming through there. The idea that, like, she was with him, mom was with him, but he for us was a presence. That feels like there's a little anger there, right? Am I wrong? Am I picking up on something that's not really there? Am I projecting my own feelings on parents?
Well, it depends on what you think the anger is. Is that anger like he should have been something more to them and he wasn't? Or is the anger at themselves? Like, we should have seen him more as a human and more than a chauffeur and a banker and all these things. Like stop with all that stuff. Like, do you see him as a human man who loves you and is your father? You know, like, do you see him like that? So I guess it depends on where you think the anger lies here.
Both?
Because I think for both daughters, it could be different.
Right.
Like, I think that Abigail truly has remorse about, like, maybe I didn't spend enough time with him and really get to know him. You know, I don't know. I feel like Paige is
much younger.
She's generally much younger and much more immature emotionally and otherwise. And I feel like there's, you know, she is not a mother. You know, she is a wife, but they never really hit on how would you feel if Russell died? Like, that would have been a really normal comment to make, you know, like, because you are married and you guys are husband and wife. Like, you should understand what I'm talking about. But she doesn't hit on that at all. I don't know what that says about Russell and Paige or what they think about Russell and Paige, but it definitely felt like there was remorse there. I don't know if that was just Abigail sort of like projecting Paige's biz sort of out loud, like just basically saying like, you treated him like this. But I wonder if Abigail did herself as well.
I think there's some self-blame here, which I think is interesting because it plays into the next clip we're going to play where she's talking to her mother about you can't blame yourself for the things that you're trying to blame yourself here for. But I think you're right. She's probably, you know, one finger pointing at you, four fingers pointing back at me kind of thing.
Maybe 3 and 2.
3 and 2, right? I realized that number didn't work. The thumb just points up to the sky. It's not really doing anything.
Right. But I want to hit on this before we get off this, because I really think this is an important portion. If they say things like, you're a chauffeur in a bank, right? There's that scene at the dinner table at the cabin when Paige says, my children. You're not going to feed that to my children, right?
What? But that was some bizarro shit.
I know.
What was that?
I agree. But hold up. When Abigail defines herself as a mother, she talks about driving them places and taking them to their activities. And for me, I would never have said, these are my children, and let me define that by how I drive them to different places, which is kind of exposing how she thinks of her parents, because she is putting herself in the role of, like, I would have said things like, you don't worry about their health. You don't worry about their education in the future. You don't worry, like, things that parents, real parents, care about day after day, the things that really weigh on your heart. I never would list the fact that I give a ride to an activity as a defining reason I'm their mother. That's not it for me. And frankly, I don't even have to be there at their activity, and that makes me their mother. It's this way larger, overarching umbrella of love and worry for their well-being. Why she reduced herself to a ride to gymnastics or whatever felt like, wow, you guys have some interesting definition of what it is to be a parent.
Which I think has things wrapped up into it with wealth and privilege. I think that's showing its face there a little bit. Though, when you think about the things that she listed, yes, she said chauffeur, she said bank, but she also said was there at our events.
Well, he said cheerleader and
and also therapist, which indicates that they would have conversations of some level. So there's a mixed bag there. But that's a great line drawing how she defined herself as a mother versus what she had just been yelling at her sister about, how the idea of their father.
And let's talk about for a second that calling him a therapist, because you know what? You may figure out stuff about yourself, but in a therapist relationship, you don't learn about your therapist, which is pretty much the whole freaking point. None of them really knew Preston. He may have been on the side where people would go vent to him. People would go get resources from him. No one was asking questions back. No one was listening to the stuff he was saying that he cared about. It was more like, I mean, God, at that one point when Stacey says, I didn't come up here because I thought I'd be bored, my heart like broke in half. Gosh, like, I wouldn't feel that way. If you're in love with the person, you want to see and experience the things that make them happy. That felt like, wow, there was some distance in this relationship. And I know at this first initial grieving, which this is all so raw. I mean, this just happened like a second ago. There is that sense of like, mom and dad were saints and they loved each other perfectly. Yeah. she's exposing that stuff. Like, I didn't come up here because I cared more about my pleasure, my excitement, my everything. I couldn't be put out, inconvenienced, or just for God forbid, bored for a moment. Wow. I don't know. Is that being a great spouse? I'm not so sure.
I mean, I think her and Laura get at this, and the clip I have for it is part of the, existing, living versus existing. The idea that Laura says, we can't leave the city because what would we talk about? Our marriage wouldn't last a minute. Because if you strip away all of the things that occupy us and distract us, and it's just us sitting next to each other on a porch in the middle of nowhere,
we'd have nothing to say.
We'd have nothing to say. And
yeah, that's scary.
You hear about this, at least in TV and movies, all the time. Like, the secret to our marriage was never being around each other. And it's so cynical, but maybe for a lot of people, unfortunately, maybe it's true. Maybe those people are actually just being very honest with themselves, which is sad.
It's sad that we all put ourselves in like this silo where, like, I would rather not be bored than spend time doing something or just observing or being in your orbit, figuring out things about you. They never really seemed to have that. They had those conversations on the phone, which I think were really cute and definitely like showed more of their relationship. But there's something there that is an obvious void where at least she feels now, because we don't get to know what he thought, at least she feels like there was a whole side of him she knew nothing about.
I think that this clip is interesting. It comes from the end of the episode when she's talking to Abigail on the porch. And to me, it resonated because she couldn't even pick the reason why the distance and she never came out here. Was it because there was no bathroom? But was it because of she didn't want to intrude on the man time with Preston and Paul, his brother? Was it because she was bored? Like, she couldn't decide, but she was just cycling through these excuses. And at the end of the day, it didn't really matter the reason why. It just mattered that she hadn't been here. And for that, she was feeling guilt. Let's play this clip.
I never came with him because I thought I'd be bored. Or, a third wheel. I didn't want to interrupt his man time, his brother time. I thought about bringing you two out when you were younger, but then it's not a vacation for him. It's a trip, and he's worried about pleasing you and not himself. And wow, was I wrong? I robbed us of this. I robbed him of sharing it with us.
Please don't do that. Do not blame yourself for things that you didn't do. You had a loving marriage for 40 years in New York City. I mean, they should build a statue of you two. Miss him. God knows I will. But no blame.
I mean, my heart wants to say Abby's right there. You were married 40 years. You did make it through. And I'm sure the 40 years, not all of it was spent with Preston coming out here based just on the timeline that they're setting forth, right? It was 30 years of coming out here, 25-year journal. So there was a time when it was just the two of them in the city. And the city is a grueling place. It takes its toll emotionally. It takes its toll physically. And they made it. And so my heart wants to say Abby is right there, that there's no blame. But Stacey feels like there's blame there for good or for bad, for right or for wrong. And when you're in the grieving process, whether you're right or not, I don't think really makes a whole hell of a lot of difference. It's what you're feeling and what you're going through. And she definitely feels like she's going to be working through some demons and excising some guilt here. What's your take on Abby saying, don't blame yourself, look what you accomplished in your marriage and in your life together, versus the cycle of excuses that Stacey's coming up there? She names them all.
Here's the deal on that. Some of the stuff that she's listing off would be accurate if she was going to go every single time he was going. Okay, like she would intrude on brother time if she was going every single time he was going or whatever. But to have never gone once in 30 years, I don't think is explained away by any of those other reasons. Because They could have come for 2 days and then taken off, and he could have had the rest of the week. You know, like I respect the comment of like, when you bring your kids somewhere, it's no longer a vacation. Now it's a trip. Now we're worried about if the kids are having a good time. Is the food what they want? Are these activities appropriate for them? All those things, right? Like we're no longer relaxing and enjoying ourselves. So these all have they are real reasons. I feel like part of the blame question comes into who made this decision and why. Why did Stacey make the decision unilaterally that she and the kids were not going to go? It seemed to me like, why wasn't there a discussion? You don't have to take blame if it was a decision they both made, that Stacey wouldn't have a good time there and so therefore don't come, or the kids wouldn't be comfortable so therefore don't come, whatever, or I want to spend time with my brother so therefore don't come. If it was a couple decision, I think the blame or the regret, and I'm going to I have to switch the word blame to like regret, remorse, whatever. But I know she uses the word blame, but blame is on her shoulders because it seems like he asked her to come or he wanted her to share this on some level. And again, maybe not the whole week, maybe 2 days. And she made the decision alone. And that's where I feel like Abigail doesn't get that. Yeah, they had a great marriage, yes, but there's very clearly stuff. I mean, he was telling her stuff over the phone and writing stuff in that journal he wanted to share with her. It was very clear that he had a yearning to share these things with her. I think that it's disingenuous to act like it was all or nothing. Like she had to go all 30 years every single time he was there for every single day he was there, or never go at all. No, I think that there's an easy compromise where once every couple years you come out for a day or two and you experience his world. I think that would have been completely appropriate and a nice like mixing. Part of the thing about grief, though, is things can feel black and white. Sometimes the grays go away and you suddenly feel like I don't have a chance to have that nuance anymore. I just either did it or I didn't do it. And I have to have those conversations with myself about my mom. Like, we either had that conversation or we didn't. I either asked her about that or I didn't. When in reality, when I really think back to conversations, we did touch on those things. Maybe it wasn't a pointed question. Maybe it wasn't a topic that like we dwelled on. But if I really think back, yes, we did have those conversations. There is something odd about when someone dies where it becomes black and white. And that either becomes they were a good person or a bad person. You had a perfect marriage or a terrible marriage. The grays go away in a strange way. The nuance goes away and it's all about blame or happy what you did. And it's like, no, of course there's an in-between. There were reasons. And
nuance like gets lost in grief.
Skipping it completely does. It completely does. And everybody has these big moments where they're feeling so overwhelmed by their grief. The rational side, when you actually can, either over time or because you work it out with a therapist or whatever you do, where you can actually revisit it at a little bit more neutral place and say, wait, I was a good daughter, or I was a good wife, or I was, I was respecting his time with his brother, whatever the reasons are that we're sitting here with Stacey feeling this way. I also think that journal is a fascinating device in this story. This is a total plot device. It is our roadmap. It is our everything that is going to tell us everything about Preston, everything about how he feels about Stacey, everything about the different locations that we're going to go visit. Like, we basically have a map that she found. And we're going to start with Stacey's Valley. In my heart, this is my prediction, we're going to end at the Virgin River, where the last place he was. That's in my mind, which will be a major trek. It will be a huge deal. And who of the family is going to actually make that trek? It might only be her at the end that actually decides to take it that far. But that's my prediction of the whole thing. And again, I've not seen ahead, so.
Let's finish the grief cycle here with this. You touched on this conversation about nourishing our bodies, but I think this was a larger commentary on the family and the state of the family and the state of the family now that Preston is gone. This is the end of the conversation after Abigail has spit out the elk and she's done a little cursing at her husband, Russell, and she's just she's struggling with her mom and her behavior and why they're here. This is the elk conversation coming to a head versus beef. This is polenta versus grits, which, by the way, they are essentially the same thing. She's absolutely wrong. Paige is really the stand-in, is the Taylor Sheridan stand-in for city slicker life. We've seen this character in Yellowstone. We've seen this character if you watch Landman. Like this character, this person who doesn't understand, calm, quiet, simple,
and doesn't value it. Forget about understand it. Doesn't value it.
But can't understand the idea that polenta and grits are made with the same thing because one comes from Alabama and one comes from Italy. Like literally a smart, intelligent woman who literally cannot understand the concept because it almost kind of revolts her. It's not even that she doesn't want to understand. She doesn't want to be
Do you
near
think that
it.
it's like a classism thing in that case? Like, is it that kind of thing? Like, I eat polenta, I would never eat grits.
Yes.
Is that kind of attitude we're getting at?
It's the same reason that she can't identify the color of the skin of her attacker. Because she's hitting all of the New York City standards that Taylor likes to set up in his characters when he's trying to emphasize that the West is better or the country living is better. That's all in Paige in this show. It's a little bit in Stacy. It's going to be a little bit in Abigail and certainly her kids who, the little girl Macy, she says, I didn't realize you can just grow strawberries. All of that. But I think Paige is the eye of the storm, for all of that. But let's take a listen to this conversation, which I have called the perfect meal clip.
Mom, what do you think is going to happen to all the food in this house, Paige? It's going to get eaten or it's going to rot. I didn't kill the thing. Your uncle will never kill another one. I suppose we could throw it all away. And then it's nourishing some raccoon or worms or, I guess. Or it can nourish us, which is what it's doing. When's the last time you cooked a meal, Paige? Not reheated one, not microwaved one. We picked that from a garden. Your uncle took that from somewhere around here. The cornmeal is in a jar. Did he make that? Maybe. Everything we ate came from this little world that your father adored. We made a meal from this place together. I think it's beautiful. I think it's perfect. And I know your father would too. I wonder who has to die for us to make another meal together. Good night.
Grief and wine are a recipe for some real fucking talk.
Yeah. I felt that was a real wicked moment. There's some stuff in my family that I feel like we definitely did, like Sunday dinners and vacation together and stuff like that after my mom passed became more difficult for sure, for logistics, but then also just the feeling of it, the feeling of missing somebody at the table, and that it can be hard to come back together sometimes when you feel like there's a missing piece. Now, that's not exactly what she was talking about here. She was talking about them actually coming together because of missing dad and being here really physically for dad. We had to come get dad, literally. But I felt like this is what was making me try to understand the dinner at the restaurant and how edgy and quick to get angry Stacy was with the family about the phones. I understand that, to me, I would not want to ever sit at Taylor Sheridan's table and have my phone out. It's very clear to me that he has opinions on that. And I am definitely somebody who encourages my kids and other people at the table to put it away. But she was so ready to be mad at them that it made me feel like they actually got together kind of regularly, because in my brain, I didn't think that she would be so ready to yell at them if this was like a special occasion that they were together. And I didn't think that they would have that meal unless they had meals regularly without dad being home. Why would they have it when dad's out of town? That seemed odd to me. So I was really trying to reconcile this entire concept of do they get together regularly? Don't they? She was so ready to be pissed at them, but it also seemed like the first time she ever told them this, because they all seemed shocked that mom was getting this upset about everything. I don't know. What's your take? Like, do you think like was that meal a meal they had often? Like, I don't mean the elk meal, but like the restaurant.
All the time. I think that was a regular, because they don't make dinner. Stacey's character understands, because again, I'm sure if we will learn, probably her and Preston's wealth came after they were together. They've been together since she was 19. I think we're going to learn this was a self-made family kind of situation. And so she remembers what it is to have to make a ramen noodle, probably out of, a microwave. But they don't do that now.
I'm going to say, I feel like she probably came from money. And because of Paul, I think that exposes Preston's upbringing. And that makes me feel like he's a self-made man, but she's too used to this life. Like I feel like had this life and has never known anything differently. Even their age difference, like they purposely said it was his 64th birthday. And at another point, she says she's 65, which means he was 63 and she was 65. I think that matters. I think that there's something to her being a couple years older. And also, I think it's a cute nod to like Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell that like she's older than him.
Michelle Pfeiffer in real life is 67. So she's playing 65 here, really 67. They have Kurt Russell playing 60, turning 64. He's really 74. So I actually was a little annoyed that they made the guy younger than the woman who was really like 7 years or
yeah, but Kurt wasn't supposed to play this role. It was supposed to be McConaughey.
Oh, that's true.
So I think that would have matched. 64 would have been pushing it for McConaughey. Like that would have felt right on, and also give you that younger guy, older woman sort of feel to them. I think because he's I want to say in his 50s, but I think there's something to that. I think that we might find out because again, if they met when she was 19, he was only 17. There's more to this, I think, and they wouldn't. There's no way they would have Michelle Pfeiffer say I'm 65. Without there being a reason.
In my note, it's in my notes lower down from where we are, but the same thing. I know I tracked the same thing that they intentionally gave both of their ages and made her a little bit older. But to answer your original question, I think this was a regular meeting for them, as much as two sisters who have one of whom has kids get together. I think this is a pretty regular thing. Maybe not every day, but certainly this is at least a weekly dinner that they do. It wasn't a special occasion, and I think her anger with the phones. I think you can track back to Paige having been mugged earlier in the day. I think you could track it back to the lunch she has with Laura. I think the Women's Center, Washington Heights Women's Center conversation, the conversation about they don't eat junk food because they want to. It's because what's available. And then Laura saying that the produce rots in the food bank because they do want the junk food. I think overall, Stacey is stewing on maybe being done being the city mouse that she refers to her earlier. I think she's missing her husband who is out in God's country, living it up, fishing, and can't even be reached because there's no cell service. I think she's ruminating on all of this.
That's a total Yellowstone thing.
It is. John would always put himself in a place where his phone wouldn't work.
Yep.
I think all of that is playing on her mind. I think she's stewing on all of those things. And so I think the idea that they're all sitting staring at their phone, none of them have anything interesting to say. Russell Wright gives some kind of work breakdown and she goes, so you have nothing interesting going on today. I think all of that is kind of bubbling in her. So I think it's a little bit of a lash out because she's starting to have the same thoughts already that why is she here and Preston is over there and they're not together. I think there's some subtext that when you look back on it and you go back and rewatch the episode, you're like, oh, she's already thinking about this. She's already feeling the distance right here. But I want to go back to I don't know if they're patrons or they're on the board, but the conversation, there's the presentation about the opening of the Washington Heights Women's Center. There's an interesting conversation whispered between Stacey and her friend Laura there about them. But for me, I thought it was interesting and it really kind of hit home the privilege angle of the New York City life that they were living, because here Stacey is, again, either as a board member or as a patron of this new women's health center. But when her daughter is mugged, she has her go to a very private, exclusive doctor for personal stitches on Park Avenue. Not at an ER, not at a women's center. She goes, because she's able to, she has, Dr. Steele do stitches like that, like just on call. That's not the experience most of us have. There's an irony here. Like, Stacey knows the words. She says the words about why people like junk food. But for me, it was a little, it's kind of ironic, right?
That conversation was interesting from a writing standpoint for me, because I felt like they presented both sides of that argument. Like, they said, you know, we need a nutritionist, and, you know, because there's this junk food issue. And then you kind of have this pushback from Stacey, like, that's not true. And then you have this other thing, which I am embarrassed to say I did not look up to find out if this is factual. So I'm just going to go with the idea that it's factual. It's at least factual within the story, that the friend says the produce all sits there and rots. Nobody chooses that. That is an interesting, like, kind of showing both sides. Like, does there need to be more discussion about nutrition? Does the produce really sit there and rot? Like, maybe it's just one of those things where it's meant for discussion. Like, it's a tiny moment, but maybe in your own house, you're like, gosh, I never really thought about that. Like, is that what's going on our food bank? Like, I don't really know. I volunteered at our food bank. I can say a lot of the stuff was rotten there. A lot of the canned stuff and stuff was easier, of course, just because it has a shelf life, and the things that have to go quickly, unfortunately, don't get processed through very quickly. There's moments in Sheridan stories where you feel like you're supposed to think about it. You're supposed to stop, whether it's, do you use your cell phone at dinner? Are you being, and is it rude? Maybe we just leave that question. Is it rude to use your cell phone at a table? Discuss. I think maybe it would be wrong of us to assume everybody thinks it is rude, because I don't think everybody does. I also wonder about the concept of nutrition versus no, this is a choice. Like, okay, discuss, figure this out, go read, go find out about your local food bank. Like, sometimes I think he just drops these things in here that are like meant to be discussion points, and it's easy to blow by. And I think that's why we're getting into our next theme, living, not existing. It is that sort of like, he wants you to stop and examine your life. He wants you to stop and have a discussion with your family. He wants you to talk to your friends, your siblings, your parents. Are you living or are you existing? And how long can you actually do that?
The last thing I wanted to bring up before I play my first clip for the next section is Stacey has that conversation with Abigail after they've watched A River Runs Through It, which, by the way, this episode was dedicated in loving memory to Robert Redford. When I saw that at the end, it made me smile with why they used A River Runs Through It as the movie that they watch, because not a rom-com, not a comedy or anything you're going to laugh in any way. It's a very kind of heavy movie, sad movie, make you cry movie. But Robert Redford directed A River Runs Through It. So I thought it was actually a very nice little, a sweet head nod looking backwards of like why they picked that movie, in addition to obviously the fly fishing in the river and all of that.
There was a couple of moments like that. Like I mentioned the Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell age difference, but also the person who calls to say that Paul and Preston had passed away was Shepard.
Yeah.
And I mean, anyone who watched Lost knows that Shepard is a huge callback to Lost. So I thought that was great.
Also, like, Jack could have been a little sweeter in the moment than I thought he was.
Perhaps so. You're right.
Well, anyway, so Stacey says to Abigail when they're laying in bed, she says, you know, we were married 39 years. We never fought. We came close. Sure, we were right on the edge of it sometimes, but we never fought, ... Find yourself a man worth missing. Now, again, I love this sentiment. It's odd to me that in 39 years you didn't fight. Even the best relationships fight. There's something healthy in fighting and in airing your grievances. And then over 39 years to not fight? How much time were you spending apart in order to have that idyllic situation?
Or how many decisions were you making unilaterally? Because the fight comes in when you have to compromise. Right. The bickering comes in when you have to sit down and have two opposing ideas and actually work it out. Like, and I'm looking at you, Preston, as well. Like, did you just sit back and have Stacey make all the decisions? Was that your privilege? Was that you got to just go enjoy, you know, trips with your brother and stuff like that? Did Stacey have trips with her siblings? Was this like a, you know, tit for tat? Was this common? Is this what was happening? Or did you guys have family vacations and then dad had his vacation? And is that cool? Like, question mark. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the not fighting. I know couples who say they don't fight, and my eyebrow goes way up because I think, you know what? If you're two intelligent people who treat each other like equals and who love each other and have your own ideas, it is impossible to me that you do not have points in time when you have opposing opinions on something that you want to hash out. And it's not even to try to make the other person go with your idea. It's just that, I don't know, a healthy debate can be pretty fun, honestly. Mm-hmm. And also, I think that there's an element of like you said, how out of each other's lives do you have to be to never have friction? It's really easy if you're driving on two different highways to never collide. And that's sad if you're really doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I was married a long time, and I would tell people all the time, no, we never fight. And I'm now divorced for 10 years. It's just not realistic. And if it is realistic, there's probably an underlying issue, is all I'm saying.
When people say they don't fight, what does that mean?
I think there's probably a failure of communication is my experience.
Okay.
And I think the things you're pointing out here, I think are very consistent with that because I think you're dead on. I think there's a lot of unilateral decisions. I think there's a lot of Preston just being okay with it. You know, he said, we heard it a couple of different times. He would turn his phone around or send a picture, or she would comment that I've seen it. I've seen the fish. I've seen the river. I've seen the moon, the stars. You sent me a picture. And he says to her, you need to see it, Stace, just once. It's not the same as in the pictures. But he didn't push the issue, it doesn't seem. He was saying, please come out here just once. But he didn't push the issue. That's a failure to communicate on both sides.
I definitely think it's a failure to communicate how important it is to you. And I think if you have things that are important to you, I would highly suggest that you hang on to them. Because when we're getting into this living and not existing whole portion, the things that are important to you, if you have a good relationship at all, they should be important to the other person on some level. I agree that it doesn't have to be the same interest level, but you can't have no interest in something that's very important to your partner. That's destined to go badly.
And if you just roll over all the time, also to take the Preston side to it, not that we know that he just rolled over in life, but using this as an example of she never came out, which means he must never have forced the issue, you're also going to breed some resentment there. And eventually it is going to bother you. And then whose fault is it? You maybe didn't clearly express how important it was to you, or you should have fought with it. Maybe it was worth a fight. There are things that are worth fighting for on both sides.
I wonder about their family, really, Paul and Preston's family, because the adamant nature in which Paul is like, no wife, no kids, no dog.
Needy. Dogs are needier than girlfriends, he says. Oof.
Yeah, but it makes me wonder about why he wants no attachment to anything and what went on that we're not understanding, because maybe Preston got through some of that. Like, let's say he's 50% more healed than whatever was going on with Paul. There's something there, and I don't know if they'll explore it or not, but it seems like connection and communication very clearly could have been an issue in their household growing up, because Paul can't even stand to have even a pet because that's too much. Preston having a wife and having a family, obviously he got through some of that, but maybe he does have attachment issues. Maybe he does have sort of everybody's a little bit at arm's length. Like he's happy to write all his thoughts down in a journal. He's happy to even FaceTime with you, but maybe he didn't totally want her there. Maybe there wasn't. I mean, we can both agree that there's no way if you bring your wife and children to Paul's house that you're going to get a great reception, because Paul has no wife and children and does not value that. Immediately, Paul's going to retreat. Like, you're going to have your family time and all that stuff, and that's cool. But there was never any, I miss Uncle Paul. I'm so sad we're not getting a chance to see Uncle Paul. Or, oh my God, I can't see Uncle Paul dead on the slab. That's too upsetting. No one ever called him Uncle Paul. What went on? Like, what is their dynamic? There is something much different about their family.
Let's talk about living versus existing.
We're sitting there on the beach and watching all these couples walk by. We're the youngest there by like 2 decades. I mean, everyone's in their 70s and 80s. Barely waddle across the sand. All covered up in their big hats and their long sleeve shirts. They'd made it. But their bodies are too old to enjoy it. flew halfway around the world, and they were too old or crippled to swim the water, run in the sand, make love. None of it. They finally made it. They were all too old to create a single memory. And they knew it. It was on every one of their faces. Saw them at the restaurant. Same thing, not a smile among them. Because they knew. They'd worked their whole lives for that moment. The moment had already passed them by.
That's why I'm here. That's why I quit. I make a memory a day, brother. Sometimes more.
But make them for who, huh?
Let's take the back end of that conversation. Let's take Paul's response, because I think it plays exactly to what you were just talking to. I'm out here. That's why I quit. What did you quit? Were you also in the city? Were you guys working together? Did you make your money together, maybe?
Did you have a family?
Did you quit your family? But you're making a memory a day. Okay. And then the conversation goes on. He's like, but now Preston, who has been contemplating like waiting too long to make memories, but he stops and says, but also you're missing the part, Paul, that I said that you have to make them with your family, though.
I think that that's debatable. I think that that's where we get into some generational stuff, because I think that people younger than us very much value their personal experience. You know, their individual memories are worth it. They don't have to have it with someone else to give it value. I'll speak to that in that regard. Like, I give that as much credit as it's due. My memories do need to be with other people. Like, that I do find value, because part of the fun of memories are reliving those memories and talking about those memories and having someone else to be like, do you remember how cute that was? Or do you remember how funny that was? Or, oh my gosh, remember when the waiter fell down? Or like, whatever, right? Like for me, memories come to life when you talk about them with people who you experience them with. But I cannot begrudge those people who do not or choose not to. What, are they supposed to never have memories? Like, that's ridiculous. Are they never supposed to? And are they less valuable than my memories? Certainly not. It is curious to me, and listeners, if you're listening and you're single and you feel like you're doing life pretty independently, maybe you don't have kids or you really don't have connections with other people, how do you experience your memories? How do you relive them? Or how do you feel about this concept of Preston sort of pushing back on Paul and being like, but who are these memories for? Like, what is this? Like, does that challenge you? Because for me, when Paul's sort of like talking back to Preston and being like, yeah, I don't want any of those things. I don't want anybody to need me. I don't want any of that stuff. I can appreciate that. I mean, sometimes it's very hard to be needed so much in a family. I mean, sometimes that feeling is very overwhelming. You're a father, you know, sometimes it's a lot. It's a lot on your shoulders. And if you could, for 5 minutes, feel like, oof, I don't have any of that, that does seem like it would be a relief at times. But I don't have enough life experience of having an independent life. I had my kids very young. I was married very young. So for me, I never had that independent time. I don't know what the point of view is. Did you have any sort of time when you felt like you were independent and you were making memories for you and you value those memories? You understand that point of view?
I had a very small window, very long ago before I had a long relationship and then we're married. And I have memories from that time that I recall. But honestly, when I recall them when I'm talking to my son, who is just about the same age as when I made those memories. And that's how they come up. Even in reliving them, I'm only reliving them when I'm relating them to Tom and talking about, well, these are things that I was doing at this age. I think I agree with Preston that, and you, like you just said, like, I take a lot of pictures of things. I'm terrified of losing my memory. I have a couple of weird fears, or maybe not weird, but losing my memory is one of them. So I take pictures of everything now. Do I look back at them right now? No, I don't. But I want them there because in case there's a time when I do need to look back at them and relive those memories. But I'm going to relive those memories with my loved ones around me, though, because they were like you, like when the waiter fell over, when you set the thing on fire by accident, when you saw the turtles on the beach, like those, weren't experiences in isolation. They were with someone, they were with people, they were with your family. And that's how I want to remember them and relive them. Now, I think it's interesting when Preston presses Paul, where the clip ends that I played, Paul, I didn't continue because when he made the clip too long, he says, well, I experienced them with you. And Preston says once a year. That's not enough. Once a year, you share your those memories you make with me, which is interesting that the brothers only see each other. We're talking like he's out here all the time. Sounds like he's out here only once a year.
Right.
Is that enough? And to the point of, yeah, it could be a lot. There is moments when everyone, I'm sure, feels like, I just want to be left alone. Please. It's too much.
Or I just don't want the obligation or the responsibility. There's
an edge, though, when he says, how about a dog? And he says, they're needier than girlfriends. That's a line. I mean, maybe it's just how Matthew Fox delivered the line, but that's a line with like some spice behind it.
That's what makes me wonder about their upbringing. Yeah. And that something like he's been burned, like something went on, because people I don't think have that type of attitude, especially about something like a pet, like unless something has really gone on that made you soured on it. But I do listen, I understand that some people feel most comfortable alone and that they are truly introverted, independent souls, and they are truly happy by themselves. And there's nothing wrong with them. That is just the way they choose to go through life. I would love to hear a perspective from that side to understand like what you thought of this conversation and what you thought about how do you deal with like I'm making memories. I belong to a women's travel group in which like 90% of the women are traveling alone. And I wonder all the time about how that feels to be experiencing something amazing and looking around and not recognizing anybody around you, or maybe you're truly alone in this experience. Like maybe there's nobody else around you.
Non-judgmentally. Like I think you and I, but I don't want people to be like, oh, you guys, but like, no, this is a non-judgmental thing. This is like an honest.
I think I'm being very clear about that,
yeah.
That there are absolutely people who are independent. And what I'm saying is the purpose of me being in that group is because I would love to have the confidence to be able to travel by myself and have complete satisfaction that no one else experienced anything of this with me, but that's perfectly wonderful. And I am completely great with these being my personal memories. That would be, for me, growth, because I feel like I need people to be there to sort of validate and remind me and talk about it with me and all that stuff. And there's two sides to this coin. And I think that they didn't give Paul enough time here to explain why. And I know we're going to have flashbacks. I've seen that they're obviously going to use flashbacks.
He's listed for 3 episodes, Matthew Fox.
Yeah, so there's going to be other flashbacks. I can see that. And so I wonder if we'll get more insight as to like, why does he feel so fulfilled doing life by himself? And what can we learn from that? For those of us who feel like we need to have people around us in order to have this satisfaction of life, like what can we learn from people who are completely independent and can be fulfilled all by themselves? That's amazing to me and something that I haven't been able to do yet.
Let's talk about the main thrust of why I played that clip. This line, they waited their whole lives for that moment and had already passed them by. Did this resonate with you? Like, cause for me, this was a big crux of the episode. This idea, this living, not existing, waiting too long, waiting. And then by the time you do it, you waited too long to appreciate it or to get the most out of it.
Well, I think you and I are at a very interesting age because for both of us, we are both 48. I think we are at a point right this second where we're starting to understand that. I want to hope it's like more like 80 and less like 70, that by that point, our health or our mobility or whatever it is won't allow us to enjoy things the way that we can now. Watching that rather than being sad about those things, I think it spurs me on to want to like have more adventures at my age now, which I think is the point of Preston's story is like, don't wait. You know, like even though you feel like you have to have this like creme de la creme vacation, right. Don't spend 20 years, 30 years, or your whole life saving for it and then not be able to enjoy it. Like maybe it would have been better to take a less extravagant life and be able to enjoy it much, much sooner, be able to retire earlier, be able to relax with like a lower expectation, I think. But that's the rub. Because again, we talked about this at the beginning, that like finances are often talked about in Sheridan's shows for different reasons. But in this one, it seems to be like our finances are fine. You know, dad had a will, dad had insurance policy. They explicitly say we are fine financially. What does it mean? And like, is this really a privileged comment of Preston's to be like, well, you waited too long? What? They didn't have enough money till they were in their 70s. They had to work. They had to raise their families. They had to do whatever they did. And it took that much work to be able to finally get there. It's a little bit much to say, well, why didn't you just get there by the time you were 40 and enjoy it? Like, well, we all would have wanted that. But I mean, it's not that's a very difficult goal. I
had the same thought as you. I was like, people have to work that long in order to get there. But let's zoom back a little bit and take a broader lens. That conversation begins with him saying, I took Stacy and the girls to this island. It was like $30,000 a night, 10,000 night rooms. And Paul says, this doesn't impress me. And Preston says, it doesn't impress me either. But we live in a world that people quantify the idea of making it by how much something costs. And so if that's how you're going to quantify making it, this resort was an example of having made it. And so I guess the question becomes, and maybe this is what Preston is saying. That's the wrong metric, wrong rubric to use to decide whether or not you've made it. Setting aside how much money it would have taken in order to build and buy the land and build the cabin or cabins, there's multiple cabins on that property. Maybe the comment that Preston is making here is that making it is not about being able to afford a $30,000 a night villa when you're in your 70s or your 80s. Maybe we have to make making it a different rule so that we can be making it now, so that we can be living now and not waiting for some goal that someone else said is the goal of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's like a commentary on like consumerism and stuff too. Like if you don't have to spend money on a really fancy car to impress yourself, your neighbors, your friends, then, you know, you could retire sooner or, you know, but I think in this day and age, I don't know if this is too tone deaf, to be honest with you, because people are saying, look, it takes all the work I can possibly do in a day to keep a roof over my head. And y'all are acting like I'm trying to save up to go to the Ritz-Carlton. I'm not. I'm just trying to feed my family and keep a roof over our head. And so kind of how dare you act like we're all just out here, you know, buying our Gucci or whatever when
being
we're 25
frivolous.
Because that is sort of the idea of like, is that what you're saying? You think that people are spending money on the wrong thing? I understand what you're saying about like maybe lower the expectations. Say a simple life is still a beautiful, wonderful, we should place more value on that type of life where you don't have to have as much money in theory. But everything you said, it would cost money to have that land.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. Exactly. And I was trying to say, let's set that aside, that it would cost a tremendous amount of money to go live where Paul lives.
Yes. I know this because honestly, years back, I was like, oh, I would love to take the kids and go up and see like Montana and all that area. You have no idea how much money those plane tickets are.
So expensive.
Four digits per person to just fly up there. And then to find a place to stay because they are few and far between. It is astronomical. So this idea of a simple life, it's questionable to act like that equates a less expensive life. Not necessarily. Really, honestly, not necessarily.
Right. Simple and cheap are different things.
They really are.
But of course, though, we do see the juxtaposition, though, with Paige at the beginning, having just come from the great shopping down in Greenwich Village with her Hermes bag and her other shopping bag, and then she gets mugged, which doesn't happen in broad daylight in Manhattan anymore. It's certainly not in the way that they portray that.
There was 1,000% that streak of men walking up to women and punching them in the face. that was happening in New York City not that long ago. It was like maybe a year ago. It was a whole bizarre trend of just walking up to a woman and punching her into the face. It wasn't even to rob her. It was like literally just to do that. So I don't know if maybe this was written and they had just read that story or something, but that did happen. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've gone into New York City with just my kids myself. I'm not scared I'm going to get punched in the face in broad daylight. I walk around with shopping bags. I've never thought about that before, but there were incidences.
Yeah, I remember that. That was happening really up around Times Square.
It happened to, was it Rick Moranis? Remember he got like punched in the face?
Yeah, yes.
It was totally crazy. And it was like, what? Who would do that to him? And that was it. It was just to punch him in the face for the sake of punching.
And chivalry is not so dead that even after, maybe not during the attack, maybe they're not going to flying tackle that guy. They wouldn't just stand around and stare at her or not approach her at all. People would come and help her. She would not be left alone. Like New York City is definitely like no one's business. Everyone is just doing their own thing. But we're not going to, again, not in broad daylight, not with as busy as that sidewalk is. It's not.
I don't know, Mike. I'm telling you, you know what they teach in self-defense class? Don't ever yell help or rape. You have to yell fire and then people will come. But if you yell help, no one's coming.
I'm just saying, it felt a little bit like anti-NYC bias for...
Well, as an NYC boy, I understand you're bristled. At the same time, you can't ignore like some general facts, right? Like punching in the faces has happened. They do teach this in self-defense class. There are some facts here that, like, I don't know, not in every incident would they do anything.
Let us continue our exploration of living, not existing. This is the conversation we've referenced it a couple times. This was when Stacy was talking to her friend Laura.
Well, why don't you?
Because our marriage wouldn't last a month.
Oh, stop it.
I'd have to learn how to cook for one.
Oh, God forbid, yeah.
And what in the world would we talk about? All of our friends are here, the ones that haven't moved to Florida. Yeah. This is my city. It has gone to hell before. It will come back. It always does. Now you, on the other hand, how you keep your mountain man in Manhattan. That is a trick that you must show me.
Our daughters is the trick. He would never leave them, and he will never get the girls to leave. So, no, he just, as long as he gets his little escapes... But you have to wonder why we choose to live in a place we need to escape.
Because there's no stock exchange in Telluride, my dear. Whenever I see Michael looking at properties online, I just remind him how far that is from Yankee Stadium, and that usually does it.
You'd have to stock the Hudson with trout to entice mine.
Just buy him a little cabin in the Catskills. I think they invented fly fishing there. It's just 3 hours away. He can go there whenever he wants. It's easier to get there than the Hamptons.
You realize all we ever talk about is leaving. It's all anyone talks about.
Well, of course we do. We're New Yorkers. What else are we going to talk about if we can't complain about our city?
Oof, so much of that felt too real.
Well, you're a city boy. Is that what New Yorkers are always talking about? Getting out of the city, doing something else?
Always talking about vacation, always talking about getting out of the city. I mean, I literally left the city and moved up to the Catskills and the foot of the Catskills where she was talking about. I literally cannot disagree with a lot of that conversation. But it was sobering. Again, now I've been out of the city for a long time. And I'm at an age now where I appreciate the nature porn more than the honking of cabs, you know. It resonated with me when Stacy asked, why do we live somewhere that we always need to be talking about escaping? That's a good line. That's a good line that we don't really contemplate. Why do we put ourselves in positions? What are we trying to achieve by putting ourselves in these positions where we have to live day in and day out and always just be fantasizing about not doing it anymore?
My life is different than yours, definitely. I live in the South. I live in Texas. We have a slower pace of life than New York City. It's something that I actually very much appreciate at my age. I love going up and visiting. I love doing it for a couple of days. I love being crazy in the city and whatnot. However, I'm super cool with my day-to-day just going at a slower pace. Like I don't know how you do it. And for me, I'm not somebody who thinks about like, I got to get out of here. I gotta be on vacation. I've got to be out of here. But I certainly know a lot of people who live in different places, not New York City, who feel the same exact way, who like, if they don't have a vacation on the docket, they're kind of freaking out because they can't stand their day-to-day life. And there could be a variety of reasons, not just the environment, but maybe it's the job, maybe it's the relationship they're in, maybe it's 1,000 things. I don't know. But whatever it is about their life, they're willing to stay in it. But the constant conversation is, I can't wait to get a break and get out of here.
So you and I literally we were having this conversation a week ago. I feel like the adrenaline that comes with living in the city and in the world, like they're talking about, like when Laura says, you know, there's no stock ticker and Telluride. I feel all of that. I have a stressful job. I have a job with a lot of obligations and people who yell. I'm grumpy a lot of the time doing it, but I'm excellent at it and I thrive in it. I can handle that kind of pressure. It's not life or death at all. It's not that kind of pressure. It's not the pressure of a doctor. It's like no one's going to die. The only thing is, if I have a bad day, someone didn't get richer or a company did. It's a very cynical life, but all of that kind of is like in my wiring. My heartbeat doesn't race with my job. Like it's a very steady heartbeat and blood pressure, which I've always prided myself on. And I still do. But also, again, I'm at an age now. I've had the life experience. I've had a bit of what it's like to not live under that gun. It works for me also. I don't know that I could live a life of leisure every day, but I certainly appreciate it now in a way, or at least a less aggressive lifestyle than I used to.
It makes me cringe when you said you can handle it, because I dislike the idea of a life setup that you have to handle. Like, I feel like that's the living versus the existing. Like, you're like, I don't lose my mind. That's an interesting measurement, you know, because it's certainly not, I'm enjoying myself. I am happy to wake up every morning. It's, I don't break under the massive amount of pressure I'm under. That feels really harsh to me.
It's a point of pride, though. It's really a point of pride. I can't explain
it to you. In New York, it absolutely is. No, I get it. I mean, the whole, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Like, I get it.
It's not for everyone,
if you
know?
don't explode, that's amazing. But also, I don't know if life is about not exploding at the end of the day. Like, and maybe, like you said, maybe that is something that at least, you know, you have that in there and you have the choice to do it or not. Because you're right. There's people who absolutely couldn't. And, you know, and I guess you should feel pride that you can.
I don't know. It feels silly to say it out loud. I think I was more proud of it.
It sounds hard to, it's like being in a vice, you know, and it's like, look, I'm like, look, my bones aren't breaking. And it's like, do you know you could just take your hand out of the vice? Like, a lot of us don't even have a vice and you don't have to do that.
It's the only thing I'm really good at.
Well, it's the only thing you've known. You know, you've never had the chance to have a different career ever. So you don't really even know that. And I feel the same way. Like, the life I lead is the life that I've had. I don't know how I would do in a different situation. Like, when I hear you say those words, as much as it is like, wow, that's amazing. And also, like, it's a little like, do you know when there's like those memes that go around where someone's running, like jogging, but like really running. Mm-hmm. And there'll be like a person's being like, you don't have to do that. Like, no one's chasing you. Like, you're okay. Like, you don't have to run like you're about to be murdered. Like, there is that element of like, sometimes you do have to put your body and your brain through the ringer in order to feel like you're doing something that's really, really hard. But I think it's hard when your life is hard 24/7. Like, I think that's really difficult. And I feel like that's a lot, even though these women, for everything we can understand, yes, they live in New York City, but I don't get the impression that the two of them are in the rat race. I didn't hear their professions. I didn't hear what Stacy does for a living. So it's a little interesting that they feel just as much pressure or just as much stress living in the city as, say, somebody who is working 24 hours a day as a lawyer or as a stockbroker or as whatever, where they feel like the pressure is on them. Like, these women didn't seem to have those jobs. Interesting that just being ancillary to people who are that stressed out makes you that stressed out.
I'm curious if we're going to learn what the source of Preston's money is, because he brings up
Me
a
too.
bunch that the daughters live off of his money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, he doesn't even actually say our money, meaning his and Stacy's. He
Right.
says it's my money when they're talking about it, in particular about Paige, where Stacy says something to him about money. And he's like, it's my money.
Well, they joined a club that they spent money on something. They spent their money on doing that club. And
That's right.
And he said they spent my money on that club.
And about her not taking a car and leaving herself vulnerable to being mugged. He says, he's like, it's my money. So she would like to continue to have my money. Then she has to take the car, or I'm going to put her in like a house in Great Neck, which is on Long Island, right off of the Port Washington train line. Whoop, 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 whoop. That was my train line growing up. It was really nice. All the Long Island Railroad riders out there that are listening, you know, I feel you. I was the Flushing stop on the Port Washington line. But Great Neck was just a couple stops later on, you know, nice area of Long Island, but it's very much my money, which I thought was interesting because otherwise he was trying to be this very zen guy. But whenever he was talking to Stacy, it was always about
very
money.
ours.
Yes.
But then it's very mine, which I agree. Very interesting. I wonder what the backstory is with this group, who came from money and who didn't. And, you know, I will say that we've seen enough TV shows to know if they had both come from no money. Stacy might be a little fish out of water in New York City. Like, she had no problem being like, you go to Dr. Steele on Park Avenue. Like, that sounds like somebody who grew up like that to me. You know, like, she knew exactly what to do and exactly how to do it. I hope it does come out. I hope that there is reveals of like, what is this story behind these characters?
We have to learn it, because I don't think you'll be able to appreciate where they're going to. The 25-year worth of journal, the how-to guide, half diary, half how-to guide, none of that will resonate. None of that will feel deep or earned if we don't learn about the New York City side, the money side, the what did he do, where did we come from side. I feel like, I mean, Kurt Russell's listed for all 6 episodes. Matthew Fox is listed for 3. They were dead within the first 30 minutes of the show. So I think we
haven't even talked about. We haven't talked about how we feel about that. I mean, are you ready to just have a moment about that?
No, let's finish this last piece about living, because then I want to just hit through the show, in particular the Montana parts between, Paul and Preston, which I think was the bulk of the show other than what we've already talked about. Let's finish this off. This is the last clip. This is, I think, the mission. I feel like this is going to be what the show is actually about as far as it's carried out. It's her having discovered this diary and now setting forth and wanting to see all of the things that Preston begged her for 30 years to go see. Now she's going to. So it's a question of, is it too late? Well, hopefully it's not too late, or else it's going to feel very all in vain. But let's listen to her conversation, Stacy's conversation with Abigail.
I need to know his last little secret. How can I say goodbye when there's still more to know? So tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up and I'm going to find this little valley. And then I'm going to bring your father here. And I'm going to bury him there. And then I'm going to take this book and I'm going to visit every place he wrote about. And you can tell me I'm crazy. You can say I need to move on. I have a whole life ahead of me and all that shit. I am 65 years old. I don't have a whole life ahead of me. I have a very small window to be reckless, to make decisions that feed this and never factor this into the equation. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what he begged me to do for 30 years. I'm going to finally see this place.
I liked this whole conversation, but it also felt very much like, all right, guys, you're wondering what the next 5 hours of the show is going to be about. this is what it's going to be about. It was very roadmappy for us, but also feels like something that should take more than 5 hours to experience.
I think that you're right. And I brought this up at the very beginning of our conversation that I do feel like this was the key to the entire story. I think 5 hours of sort of, wandering through this land and figuring out things. First of all, I assume they're going to try to hit these like highlights, right? Like we already hit things like, have you seen a sunset? Like stuff like that, right? It would be against the idea of a simple life if there were 1,000 things they needed to go see.
Right.
I think it's going to be just like 1 or 2 things per episode that we need to go see. And that's kind of the point, is that it is a finite number of these miraculous, magical places. There's not a million of them. I think it's fascinating that he kept a journal and he kept it there. That I wonder if he had a journal in New York. I wonder if he brought that book back to New York ever, or if it was just always there. I've never thought about journaling on vacation or journaling at there's a lake house in our family. I've never thought about starting a journal at the lake house and leaving it there. It's interesting. It seems like something to consider.
I want to ask you a question because you just reminded me of it. Stacy refers to this as Dad's vacations, and that if you would all come out there, it's not a vacation anymore. It becomes a trip where he's worried about you. I'm curious if you asked Preston if these were vacations. I have a feeling he would say, this is where I live. I don't think this was a vacation for him. I think this was the aspect of his life that, other than his daughters, he loved the most. I think that's the feeling I got from watching this. So where do you keep your journal? Where your heart is, where your soul is? I think he kept this journal only here. I don't think that journal ever came to New York.
If that's true, then I feel like the Stacy marriage is very questionable. Very questionable. Then we've been sold a bill of goods here that we better question about what their marriage really was. Because if that's true, if this once a year leaving, and you just said daughters, but what about the wife?
Because she says to Laura, the trick of him staying in New York is not about me; it's about the daughters. I think I was drawing on that comment that she made.
Yeah, that's all weird.
39 years, never had a fight.
I don't know what it means, though. I don't know when you say that. What do you mean? So you think they didn't have a good marriage at the end of the day?
I mean, they seem like they did. Maybe his heart was with wherever Stacy was, but it seems to me like his soul may have been here.
Okay.
You asked the right question. Why is this journal here? I've been on a number of vacations. I've never journaled on vacations. It never even occurred to me to journal on vacation. But if it was the place where I felt most alive or at peace and I was going to record it, that makes sense to me. And it seems like that was here, not Manhattan. So I think there's something significant there, I guess is my point.
Well, the part about okay, so I have siblings. I would not say that visiting my sibling was necessarily vacation. And so I would pause on that for a minute because I do feel like him going and spending time with his brother isn't necessarily vacation. There might be a different way to look at that.
Is it problematic that that's how she thought about it, though?
I don't know. I really have to learn more about what in the world was going on with them and what in the world drew Paul there, because this doesn't seem in any way to be the place that they grew up, the place where an uncle had a place and Paul inherited it. This truly seems like Paul's place. So I would like to know more. I think being only in the first episode, it's very hard for me to judge exactly what is going on here and what were those vacations / visits. What was Paul's biz? Why did we need to go visit Paul at this place like this?
Was he going out there for Paul's sake? Was he going out there for his own sake? Because when they're talking, when the storm is rolling in, I had this whole concept and I was asking, Paul clearly does this for a living, right? If he's airplaning smoke jumpers in this area such that he can use their private airstrip to go fishing in this exclusive Virgin River portion that no one else gets to come to, he knows the weather. If he knows enough that weather comes up over the mountains every day, he knows this area. So, and if he's flying every day, he should know they were staying too long. That storm wasn't going to go away, that we're going in the other direction. that didn't sit right for me, who does this for their living, such that we were getting painted by Paul. So why did he stay? I think he was staying because he was feeling greedy for his brother's time, because he doesn't have anyone else to share it with. He was hesitant to cut it short. And then Preston says, I never want to leave. Because he's like, we can go right now, which is the passive aggressive way of saying, like, but we shouldn't, don't be a chicken. But then Preston says to him, he's like, I never want to leave. Both of them are escaping out here together.
Yeah, there's a whole thing here. There's a whole thing that I'm not sure what we're missing yet.
Here's another thought I had about the journal. Was the journal really for Preston, or was the journal, yes, it was for 25 years, which would make it very far out thinking ahead. But was he making the journal really more for Stacy to eventually find?
That's too much for me. I don't think so. Because I don't think that he ever thought he was going to die and needed to be worrying about this. Yeah. So I don't think so. I think it was for himself. I think the way that it was a how-to guide, I think that there was something about him that, again, I don't think he grew up like this. I don't think this is how he and Paul grew up. So I think that there's something about this where the how-to guide actually was very important for him. Like, he needed to refer back to it about how to do certain things and where to go find certain things or whatever. So no, I don't think Stacy was in mind when he was writing it. I don't think, unless we find out something down the line that starts to expose, like, he knew he was sick, he knew something, something else that is like, oh wait, okay, that this does seem a little bit more like he meant for her to find it.
Let's talk about the brothers a little bit. I'm curious what your impression. We haven't seen Matthew Fox on television or anywhere else in a long time. You and I were both big Losties, and I like Matthew Fox. I know he's had a lot of issues in real life, but like in front of the camera, Jack was always my favorite on Lost. I always liked him. What was it like seeing him here? I'm assuming you like Kurt Russell, but seeing these two together, like, how did this work for you with the brother energy?
It was interesting to see Matthew Fox in a role where I felt like he was so comfortable in his own skin, because everything about him playing Jack Shephard was about him not really finding peace, not really being comfortable in his own skin, like sort of having this push-pull with privilege, having this push-pull with his role as a son. Even as a doctor itself, he had a difficult sort of like reconciling his role in the world. I think all of those things wasn't what Paul was. Paul was much more calm, comfortable in his skin kind of person. And so I enjoyed seeing him. Sometimes I had a hard time with some of the lines that he would say, because it's not something that Jack would have said. And so it kind of made me be like, ooh, I don't know. That's not something, Jack wouldn't have said that. So sometimes, that's difficult to shake off, that he played a character for so many years that we were so into. But generally, I think he was great casting. Kurt Russell, there's no one who can say that they did not smile when Paul says, hey, I figured out this whole way we can go this Virgin River. And Kurt is like outside on like the tarmac of the plane, and he starts doing that like serpentine jogging, dancing. That was very adorable. And I think 100% Kurt Russell, and something that he brings to the table all by himself. I wish we saw more of that. And I'm very actually hopeful that comes in more flashbacks, that we see more of that personality. But also, I can't reconcile that personality with this guy in New York, with this wife and these two girls. Right. Like, how is he the dad of these two girls? How is he the husband of this wife? That guy jigging around on the tarmac. I'm not sure. So it's like, I hope that the Kurt Russell of it all doesn't confuse who Preston Clyburn is.
Yes, I think my feeling coming out of this is a little bit what you just said. I had in my notes also. I love Kurt's little dance when he finds out they're fishing Big Loss the next day. Like, it's infectious. How do you not love it? And I love the two of these guys together in the river talking, busting each other's chops about using the special fly in order to catch a fish, and in the competition. Like, I had a big smile on my face the entire time, all of that. It felt like real joy. It felt like real kind of brotherly love chemistry. I really enjoyed it. But I agree with you. How can that guy have raised these daughters, or especially Paige in her very New York City way, if he's got this Zen fly fishing, live in a cabin with an outhouse side about him. It seems like one of these two things is not true. Because yes, we contain multitudes, if I contradict myself, I contain multitudes. I think that is true for a lot of us. We have aspects of ourselves that people see, that only some people see, but 40-year marriage, 39-year marriage, 2 adult daughters, grandchildren, that's a lot of keeping yourself or keeping a side of yourself to yourself that it seems like your daughters never ever saw. And maybe
your wife.
Or your wife only experienced via FaceTime. Like, that's a lot.
I feel weird about all that. I feel strange about all that.
I didn't mean to bring it down, but talking it through and about the journal and stuff, like, it's making me feel like there's 2 Prestons. And which one is the real Preston? You would imagine the guy who is doing a little jig dance by the plane is the real Preston, because who else is he showing out for?
Right. But also, how did he live 30 years with this mask of being someone else? Like, we need to know how he made his fortune. We need to know what the heck's going on, because there's no way he was like a stockbroker. There's no way he was like a serious banker. Like, what's his business? How did he do this? Where did he get this much money? And again, looking at Paul, how are these brothers so different? How did the one brother be like, no way? Maybe this was a family business. We do know Sheridan loves a family business.
He does.
Maybe this was a family business that Paul
works in now.
That Paul ducked out of,
right? And
said, like, I'm not going to be in the rat race. But that's not something that we saw them argue about or be like, thanks for leaving me with all this work, Paul, so you could come out here and do this. There didn't seem to be any animosity or anything like that. I agree that Russell, who does not seem like a go-getter on his own or somebody who knows anything about life, when he did that, when he was pouring on the lighter fluid,
I was
like, this dude's about to lose his eyebrows. Like, I was like, I cannot believe how much he's pouring on. Like, that lack of life experience says to me that everything was handed to Russell. Yeah. He didn't earn his way into whatever he's doing. We're investing in something. Was like, whose money are you investing? What are you doing?
Right. I mean, the Queen's English course at Brown that he went to, but of course didn't take the course himself. I mean, just that he went to Brown. But also occurred to me that maybe he is the next generation guy working in whatever the family business. I like the idea of the family business, the way Paul says,
because it's like Dutton and everything,
right? And the way Paul
Dutton
says, "I quit." That's why I quit. Like, it seemed when he said, "I quit," my first thought was these two made their money together or work together, and so it makes sense that Russell maybe, because he was talking about shipping and containers and stuff like that. That's not necessarily like a Wall Street gig kind of thing.
Right.
But it's definitely like an investments thing. So maybe he is in that family business now, but on the other side of it, and just hasn't been exposed to things like where you don't put an entire bottle of lighter fluid in your fire pit. I thought for sure, I was like, oh, we're going to have another death in this episode when he went to go throw the match in there. I was like, that's going to blow him back.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. So many question marks, but also, I can't believe Taylor Sheridan's going to give us sunshine, rainbows, and puppies. That doesn't seem his vibe. And it would be boring if this show is just Michelle Pfeiffer's or Stacey's exploration of the places her husband had been. There's going to be something more. There's going to be some, I didn't know who Preston really was, which I'm now learning posthumously via this journal guide.
There has to be some amount of challenges and obstacles beyond the, like, wearing, friggin' mules to Montana. Like the fact that she owned no sneakers. The woman owned no sneakers. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I don't know. We got to go back. You said, you mentioned you thought we were going to see another death. We've got to talk about the deaths here, because this was dramatic. I was watching this with someone else in the room, and they like clutched their pearls. Like, they like couldn't breathe when the clouds kind of parted and there was like trees and a mountain. Like, it was a freaking moment, like a heart stopped kind of moment. How did it hit you? And like, did you try to play the game beforehand, being like, okay, if someone's going to die in this show, is it going to be Paul? Is it going to be Preston? Is it going to be both Paul and Preston? Like, I was running through the scenarios before we got on that plane. I was thinking, how could one survive that plane crash and not the other? Like, how's that going to work out?
The way they were playing the idea of the bodies made me feel like we were going to get a thing where it was going to be a different body or something. Just the way that whole scene played out.
There was something personal in that, like for Sheridan, like maybe he's had to identify a body and felt like it was too much.
It's
or
gruesome.
Like that they
it's grisly
have,
in 2026 that's how we still do
that
it.
they should have a more modern way to do this. Like she said, why can't we just do this via fingerprints or something else? And of course there's scenarios in which you don't have that stuff to do. And I don't know, those seem like very intact bodies under the body bags. And it was kind of funny when she's like, which is which? Because I'm like, dude, Paul's like a whole head taller. Like, you could tell even by laying down which one was longer and which one was shorter. But at the same time, it was like, I think your body would be pretty messed up in a plane crash like that.
You would think.
even the idea that they could be identified by their faces, I even kind of wondered.
So as soon as the storm rolled in and then they were taking off and then the storm was immediately getting worse, right there I was like, okay, well, Preston's definitely going to die, which I didn't realize. I didn't realize this was going to be a flashback thing. I thought the tragedy, because the log line for this was, the Clyburn family suffers a tragedy, which makes them reevaluate their New York City life and reconcile to the country or whatever. So I didn't really think about initially what it was going to be. But as soon as that scenario happened, I was like, well, Preston's going to die and Paul is somehow going to walk away from it. And the struggle is going to be the guilt, the brother survivor guilt, and also being a living reminder to his wife of why did you live and my husband died and the father of my children die. I thought that's what it was going to be, which also very much in the Matthew Fox, Jack Shephard survivor's guilt, savior guilt that he always had in the show. So like you, I think I was reading in a little bit of Jack Shephard into what Matthew Fox's character was going to be. So I was surprised that it was the both of them who died, but also kind of happy, from a storytelling standpoint. I think having Paul live and Preston be dead would have been a little bit of a crutch for storytelling, because I think that's 9 times out of 10 what most people would have done, because there's good drama there. So I think this is interesting with both of them being dead, but also both of them being known names who are going to appear in multiple episodes, makes the storytelling be a little flashback dependent, which I don't mind, but I'm hoping that it also does give us more context for the relationships at play here, which coming out of this first 66 minutes, I don't feel like I really understand.
I agree with all of those things. I know that people are going to talk about that coroner's office and talk about, the way that they felt like that Stacey was being handled. To be honest with you, I thought she was being unbelievably rage-filled about having to go through this. I have not had to go through identifying a body, but she knew what she had to do the entire time from when she got on the plane.
I think she didn't really appreciate it, though. She seemed like she didn't really think they were going to make her look at it.
Listen, shock is okay. Shock is okay. Sobbing your eyes out is okay. Being outraged at the person who's opening the door for you, again, misplaced anger in a grief situation, totally understand. But I hope that whole concept of like what that guy's role is at the coroner's office does not get like pummeled, because I don't think he did anything she wasn't going to accept like a hug or something. Like, she was being totally she wasn't going to accept any kindness in that moment. And there was no way that they could let her out of, somebody in this family needs to identify these two people. It doesn't have to be you, ma'am, but it does have to be somebody who's a friend or family member.
I agree with you. I think she was very ragey, especially at the end where she's like, how dare you? I thought that was a little much.
It fell over the top. I mean, how dare the system? How dare it be this way? Fine. But how dare you?
Do you know what made me bristle, though? It was Shepard's. And I said this before, I understood he had a job to do, but I think he could have been sweeter in the moment in doing it. And here's why, because
he wouldn't accept it.
Yes, but the way he said, he's like, I don't make the laws, ma'am, but I do enforce them. All right, buddy, we get it. I found that to be a little much. I'm just enforcing the law. Yes, but there's a way to do it in this moment to be a little more human. He could have been like, take your time. I understand how horrible this is. I'm with you, the idea of I'm just enforcing the law. Be like, yeah, we get that, but be a little human in the moment here. I agree with you. She was definitely striking out in rage, but I found him to be a little lacking in empathy given the situation. And it wasn't like he was a cop. He was like a U.S. forestry guy. Like he wasn't
but
even,
I think he was put back on his heel by her behavior. You know, I think that sometimes when someone comes up to you and they're already yelling in your face, it's really hard to talk back like, you know, like Mary Poppins. He did do a stiff upper lip with her and be like, I'm doing my job. Because she was coming at him so hard. Hey, again, I've never identified a body. Maybe this would be a scenario in which I would be losing my mind, but not at the person so much as this is the process. This is what we put people through. This is insane. And maybe Sheridan has had to experience this, and maybe he wanted to rail against that system and say, this is archaic. There's got to be better ways to do this. I want you as an audience to feel uncomfortable because I want you to, I don't know, get behind some sort of change in the way we do this. I don't know what we're supposed to discuss about it. I certainly don't think that man at the door should have taken all the heat, like as if he made this law and he was having to do it. Like that felt too much for me.
Just a little bit of facts and figures for y'all listening. Bonneville County, which is where we were at the coroner's office, is nowhere near Bora Peak, which apparently is the mountain that they were trying to go up and over. It is 3.5 hours by car from Custer County, where Bora Peak actually is in Idaho, to where Bonneville County, Idaho is, and it's 195 miles apart from each other. So I'm curious why they used Bonneville County coroner's office instead of Custer County coroner's office for whatever reason. But Bora Peak is real. It is the highest summit in Idaho. It is part of the Lost River Range, as is the Big Lost River. It is a real river in Idaho, which I think, if I remember my map, is to the west of the Bora Peak summit. As is the Madison River, which is where the name the Madison comes from. It is a real river that runs in Wyoming and Montana. It's approximately 183 miles long if you're interested in that kind of thing. And for our purposes, if you're for a Yellowstone head, it is west of where Bozeman is, and Paradise Valley, where Dutton Ranch was east of Bozeman. So Bozeman would kind of be in the middle of where these two were. It doesn't look like they're on the map. They're too terribly far away from each other, though. I want to go back to the accident one more time, though, because I know you and I were both take this by a little bit. What was your reaction when his last words were Stacy? Preston's last words were Stacy as the crash happened. Did that hit your heart a little bit?
Yeah, it did. And I watched an interview afterwards about how Kurt Russell had brought his family. Goldie Hawn and some of his other family members were like, I didn't quite hear what he said at the end there. What did he say right before the crash? And so he actually went back to the director and asked them to sort of amplify that and make sure that people could hear that. So I do think it's worth like taking a moment and being like, wow, if they did all that, you know, that was his last thought. I mean, yeah, it of course it hits my heart and makes me feel like how awful. Just the whole thing is just so tragic. And it goes back to one of those weird things where talk about blame. Like, is there any part of him, if there was if he could have said a bunch more sentences, would he have said, I can't believe I'm here. I should be in New York City with my family. You know, like almost that sort of like self-flagellation of like, you know, I've made this such an important part of my life. And I don't want to use the word selfish or anything like that. But in that moment, you could be having these feelings of like, was I selfish? This was all about me having this like this little moment. And now my brother's going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm nowhere near my family. Did I make a crazy decision to do this? I don't know. There's a lot that came out in that Stacy moment, because to me it was like, why am I not with her? What am I doing here?
But also encouraging for their relationship that she was his last thought, though.
Truly.
I mean, he could have said a lot of things there as his last words. I mean, the words right before that were...
a lot of people would just be swearing.
I think, well, his last words before that were like, Paul, fuck. You know, so, you know.
Yeah, just a lot of swearing, I think. It's just because your brain would be like on fire, you know, like it would feel like I would have been freaking out.
I would feel like I would have been saying no a lot.
I think some people could even just pass out. I think there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of bouncing around in there.
He was freaking out. Yeah, he was freaking out as it was all happening. Like it wasn't just like we're flying smoothly and then bam, we hit the thing. It was like they had terror going on for a while, you know, being freaked out. And you could see how upset Paul was on his face. I mean, he was not saying things, but he was trying. You could see the stress on his face of like the panic of realizing like I'm in over my head. Like I'm not going to be able to fix this.
They had 3,000 feet to climb in that wind. There was just so little chance with that storm bearing down on them in that little Cessna that they were going to be able to climb that 3,000 feet, which is what they needed to do when he called it into the tower that was covering them.
I think we can all agree I don't want to travel around in a Cessna for any reason. For anything.
God damn it. There was just a Cessna crash up here last week. And I'm like, and actually rarely, in a rarity, the two people on board walked away from it. But it happens so infrequently.
It's too much.
Oh, it's terrifying. And I don't mind flying.
Helicopter accidents too. Right. I'm like, I don't want to go on a helicopter ever.
No. All I kept thinking to myself was just shelter in place. Don't get in the plane. The worst that happens is you get wet. Take the thunderstorm and just find a tree and hide under it. Don't get in the plane. Nothing good is going to come from it by that point.
I agree.
But we don't write the show, so they didn't listen to us.
No, and it wouldn't be very, very exciting if they did just shelter in place, would it?
I had this whole thing where they were both going to walk away from it, and that it was going to be some transformative, I don't want to say Yellow Jackets kind of like setup where they survive, but like there was a whole, until the Stacy and that last scene, I was like, maybe this is just all like a ruse. This is all just like a version, and this is not really going to be them dying here. Like I was doing some mental gymnastics to make them get out of it until the very last moment. That is
gymnastics, and would be an interesting plot twist to have them get out of that whole airplane situation just to like land and be safe, and then like be attacked by an elk or something, or get in a car crash on the way back to the cabins. You know,
there was a lot of bear talk in this episode. You know,
well, you thought they were safe. Like if you did a thing where you let your guard down, like, oh my God, we got through that, and then boom, you know, car crash, whatever happens.
I think that's gonna do it for this episode.
What do you think overall? I mean, I hope that on some level this is well received as a pilot. I don't know, because you and I haven't seen episodes 2 and 3, and this is coming in as a package for most viewers. I don't know if this is going to, you know, continue to elevate or if this is going to go downhill. How are you feeling right now?
I'm into it. I think you can't watch Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell and not be engrossed. I think they're just two actors at the top of their game. And even in the clips I was playing, especially like that perfect meal, the way she says, who else has to die before we make another meal together? And then, but then she catches herself and she realizes she's probably drunk. And she doesn't apologize, but she kind of laughs and she's like, I've got to go to bed. How can you not be sucked into that? Like, talk about getting the right star power to deliver these lines, and do the heavy lifting in the acting department. So I'm into it. I'm excited as soon as we're done here to go watch episode 2, so we can pick it up and pick up the discussion. So, but that being said, I do hope they don't shy away from compelling storylines. You know, I love, like I said, I love the nature porn. I'm all here for it. If she just wants to tromp through and go see things that he wrote about for 25 years, but I need a little something more there too, and some compelling. I need to be compelled a bit.
I need Paige and the sort of the immature element that we've dealt with on Landman with the daughter and the wife.
It's very Michelle Randolph coded. I wonder if they tried to get her to do this show.
I kind of wonder if they did too. I really need that to take a backseat. I'm not interested in Paige being a main character. I'm fine with it being Abigail and Stacy as the main two, with Paige and Russell maybe being some comic relief in doing stuff like, you know, lighting up the fire with so much lighter fluid. Like, that's all fine. They can be worried about the bears. They can be worried about whatever. I definitely appreciate Stacy's grief. I appreciate the shock, the everything. You know, we were talking a little bit about how in that part about the hospital bed, you know, that's difficult for me to hear because that's how my mom was. But, you know, you've been on the receiving end of a phone call. And so for most of us, those are the two ways you do this. You end up in a hospital room or you get a phone call. And, you know, few of us get that sort of in between of where it was like a quiet, you know, okay moment at home with surrounded by family. Very few people get that. I think they're going to hit a real universal feeling out here of grief and how things happen. You know, for that, I hope they find an audience.
We didn't talk about it, but I'm interested in how they carry out the Abigail storyline because she has 2 children. And we got that one phone call when they were just arriving at the airport, presumably in Idaho, or Idaho Falls. I think that's where they were headed. And clearly it was the baby daddy who didn't realize or wasn't understanding why she had taken the daughters with to go see her father and the remains and deal with the burial. So there's a storyline there of juxtaposed against this 39-year marriage where we didn't fight. Abigail clearly has had a marriage where she's either actually formally divorced or separated. She's in a bad way with her partner, the father of her children. So right there, you also have an interesting storytelling of she's the one who's volunteering right out of the gate to stay with her mom and give her company. Now, yes, we see at the end, Russell, Paige, and the grandkids are also going to go on this first walk to Stacy's Valley, but it seemed like Abigail was volunteering to be with her through the whole process. And it's going to be interesting to see if both of them have to work through their issues. Obviously, Stacy has her grief and this side of her husband that she never knew, but Abigail's lost a father. She's a mother without a husband and raising daughters and trying to reconcile with that, presumably. So she has her own kind of parallel journey maybe to go through as this story unfolds over the next 5 episodes. So I think that's going to be interesting. I do want to
add for all those Gilmore Girls fans out there, according to the cast list, her husband and or ex-husband is Finn from Gilmore Girls. So if you're into that, you might get a chance to see him.
Life and Death Brigade, baby.
That's going to do it for this episode. We're going to try to get back to you as soon as possible with episode 2. This is Caroline.
And this has been Mike. Thank you for listening to the Madison Podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Madison Podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It helps in promotion of the show. For those of you that listen to our Yellowstone shows, you're getting this automatically on your RSS feed. But if you don't, then please go subscribe to that feed, and you get all of our Yellowstone content, 1883, Yellowstone Mainline, 1923, and now here, the Madison Podcast and our Sheridan-universe of shows. And please leave us a 5-star review. It helps in promotion of the show. And if you leave something nice about us, we'll read it on air.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.